There are some men who build empires on fear, and some women who refuse to kneel. She was standing in the rain when he first saw her, not crying, not running, just still. Like she had already decided that whatever came next couldn't break what was already broken. And he, a man whose name made grown men whisper, felt something crack open inside his chest, because the mafia boss who had everything had never met a woman who looked at him like he was nothing. And that was the beginning of his undoing. If you believe love can bloom in the darkest places, if you've ever felt drawn to someone you were never meant to touch, then subscribe and tell us where you're watching from, because some stories aren't just about love, they're about surrender. There would be a night, weeks from now, when she would stand in his office, blood on her hands, tears she refused to let fall, and say the words that would shatter him. "You don't get to save me." And he would realize too late that forbidden love isn't about wanting someone you can't have. It's about becoming someone you don't recognize, just to stand beside them. Maybe you know what it's like. To meet someone whose brokenness mirrors your own. To feel seen by the last person who should ever understand you. To realize that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a man with power. It's a man with power who finally has something to lose. She didn't know that rainy night that saying no to him would make her unforgettable. That walking away would make him follow. That her refusal would become his obsession and her presence would become his religion. But some connections don't ask permission. They just happen. Like lightning. Like ruin. This is the story of how a woman who had lost everything taught a man who controlled everything that control is just another word for fear. How silence became their language. How touch became their confession. And how love, real, wrecking, impossible love, became the one thing neither of them could survive or live without. Picture it, a city where rain tastes like smoke and secrets, where marble floors echo with footsteps that never hesitate, where a single glance across a crowded room can mean loyalty or death, where she moved like a ghost through his world of blood and silk, untouchable, unbought, unafraid, and where he, for the first time in his brutal life, learned what it meant to want something he couldn't simply take. It started with a no. It should have ended there. But some stories don't follow rules, they follow heartbeats, and theirs was a rhythm neither of them could escape. She wasn't supposed to be there. That was the first mistake. The charity gala was a parade of wealth and whispered deals, the kind of event where everyone smiled and no one was safe. Crystal chandeliers, champagne that cost more than rent, women in gowns that looked like armor, men in suits that hid knives. And her, in a simple black dress that somehow made every other woman in the room look like they were trying too hard. She didn't belong, and everyone knew it. He noticed her immediately. Not because she was beautiful, though she was in that quiet, unassuming way that sneaks up on you, but because she was alone. Truly alone. Not lonely. Not lost. Just separate. Like she existed in a different frequency than everyone else. He watched her from across the room, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Curiosity, and something darker. His world was built on control. Every handshake was a negotiation. Every smile was a weapon. He knew how to read people the way others read books, their fears, their desires, their breaking points, but when she finally glanced in his direction, just for a second, there was nothing. No recognition, no fear, no calculation, just a brief, indifferent sweep of her eyes before she looked away. And that was unacceptable. He moved through the crowd like water, effortless, inevitable. People parted for him without thinking. Conversations died mid-sentence when he passed. His reputation arrived before he did, always. By the time he reached her side, she was studying a painting on the wall, some abstract thing, all chaos and color, as if it held answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. Beautiful, isn't it? His voice was low, smooth, the kind of voice that made people listen. She didn't turn. I suppose, if you like pretending chaos is art. He almost smiled. Almost. And you don't? I think chaos is just chaos. Calling it beautiful doesn't change what it is. She took a sip of her wine, red, cheap compared to what everyone else was drinking, and still didn't look at him. It just makes you feel better about surviving it. There was something in her tone, not bitterness, not quite. More like acceptance. Like she'd made peace with something the rest of the world was still fighting. And he realized, standing there in his $15,000 suit, holding a glass of whiskey that cost more than her dress, that she had no idea who he was. Or worse, she knew and didn't care. "You're here alone," he said, not a question. "So are you," she replied. And for the first time in years, he didn't have a response ready. Some introductions don't need names, just the recognition that everything is about to change. His name was Lorenzo Vitale, though most people never said it aloud. They called him other things, Il Leone, the lion, not because he was loud, but because he was lethal, because he moved with the kind of quiet confidence that came from knowing that he was the apex predator in any room he entered. Banks, boardrooms, back alleys, it didn't matter, he owned them all. He'd built his empire on precision, on understanding that power wasn't about who shouted loudest, but who whispered last. On knowing that loyalty was bought with fear and maintained with respect. He didn't make threats, he didn't need to. When Lorenzo Vitale wanted something, it happened. When he wanted someone gone, they disappeared. When he wanted information, people volunteered it before he even asked. That was just how the world worked. For him, until her. She'd left the gala early, slipped out through a side door while everyone else was pretending to care about the auction. He'd watched her go, watched the way she moved, not hurried, not sneaking, just leaving. Like she'd fulfilled some obligation and was done. Like his presence, his interest, his entire existence had made no impact whatsoever. And that was new. He found out everything about her by morning. Sophia Reeves, 29. Art teacher at a struggling community center downtown. Widowed 3 years ago, husband died in a car accident. No family, few friends. Lived in a modest apartment in a neighborhood his associates wouldn't be caught dead in. Drove a car that should have been retired a decade ago. Paid her bills on time. Kept to herself. Ordinary in every way that mattered. Except she wasn't. Because ordinary women looked at him with desire or fear. Ordinary women angled for his attention or scrambled to avoid it. Ordinary women reacted. But she'd looked at him like he was a stranger making small talk at a bus stop. Polite, indifferent, forgettable. And now she was all he could think about. His men thought he was losing his mind. "Boss, she's nobody. A teacher. What do you want with—" "I didn't ask for your opinion," he'd said quietly. And the conversation ended. But the question lingered. What did he want with her? He didn't know. Not yet. He just knew that every woman he'd ever met had wanted something from him. Money, protection, status, danger. They'd looked at him and seen opportunity, or threat. But she'd looked at him and seen nothing special. Just a man. And somehow that made her the most interesting thing he'd encountered in years. So he did what he always did when something caught his attention. He pursued it. Some obsessions start with a look, a touch, a word. His started with absence. She was carrying groceries when she literally ran into him. The bag split. Apples rolled across the sidewalk like small red planets escaping orbit. Bread landed in a puddle. And she, flustered, tired, clearly having the kind of day where one more thing might just break her, dropped to her knees and started gathering everything with the kind of quiet determination that suggested she'd been picking up her own messes for a long time. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't—" She looked up, stopped, blinked. He was crouched beside her, handing her an apple. Suit jacket, no tie. Sleeves rolled to his elbows, looking completely out of place on this cracked sidewalk in this forgotten neighborhood. And somehow, not. "You," she said. "Me," he agreed. For a moment, neither of them moved. The city hummed around them. Car horns, distant sirens, someone's radio playing too loud. The afternoon sun cut through the buildings at an angle that turned everything golden. And they were just there, kneeling on concrete, surrounded by scattered groceries, Strangers who weren't quite strangers anymore. "Are you following me?" Her voice was more tired than angry. "Yes." She blinked again. "That's honest. I don't lie." He picked up another apple, examined it for bruises, set it gently in what was left of her bag. "Not about things that matter." "And following me matters?" "Apparently." She sat back on her heels, studying him, really looking this time, and he let her. Let her see the expensive watch, the hand-tailored clothes, the kind of grooming that required both money and attention to detail. Let her see the scar along his jaw that no amount of wealth could erase. Let her see whatever she needed to see to decide whether he was dangerous or just there. "Why?" she asked finally. "I don't know yet." "That's not a good answer. It's the only one I have." She stood, brushing dirt off her jeans. He rose with her, effortless and unhurried. A few people walked past, giving them a wide berth without quite knowing why. That happened around him. People sensed something, some invisible barrier that said, "Don't approach." But she didn't seem to feel it, or if she did, she didn't care. "I don't need help," she said, "or company, or whatever this is." "I know." "Then why are you still here?" He smiled. "Just barely. Just enough. Because you haven't walked away yet." And she hadn't. She was standing there, grocery bag cradled against her chest, looking at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Not afraid, not charmed, just considering. Like he was a choice she was weighing, not a force she was resisting. "I have to go," she said eventually. "The ice cream's melting." "Can I drive you?" "No." "Can I see you again?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation, he saw it. The thing he'd been looking for without knowing it. Interest. Just a flicker, just a spark, but it was there, hidden under exhaustion and weariness and whatever weight she'd been carrying alone for too long. "I'm at the community center most afternoons," she said carefully, "if you happen to be in the neighborhood." "I'll make sure I am." "That's still following me." "I know." He stepped back, giving her space, giving her the illusion of choice. "But this time, you know I'm coming." She almost smiled. Almost. Then she turned and walked away, grocery bag clutched tight, shoulders straight despite everything. And he stood there on that cracked sidewalk in that forgotten neighborhood, watching her go, feeling something unfamiliar bloom in his chest. Hope. Or hunger. With her, he suspected they were the same thing. Some connections aren't made. They're recognized. The diner was exactly as she'd described it. Vinyl booths with duct tape repairs, a jukebox in the corner that only played country music, and a waitress named Dolores who called everyone honey and refilled coffee without asking. The kind of place that existed in every city but belonged to no guidebook. A refuge for people who needed cheap food and no questions. Sophia ordered apple pie. Lorenzo ordered coffee, black, and watched her eat. Not in a creepy way, in a curious way. Like he was trying to understand how someone could find joy in something so simple, she noticed. "You're staring," she said, fork halfway to her mouth. "You're interesting. I'm eating pie. You're eating pie like it's the best thing that's happened to you all week." She set down her fork, considered this. Maybe it is. And something about the way she said it, not sad, not bitter, just honest, made his chest tighten. When was the last time something that simple had been the best part of his week? He couldn't remember. His weeks were measured in deals and territories and problems that needed solving, in numbers and names and the careful balance of power. There was no room for pie, no room for best, just necessary and done. "Your turn," she said. "My turn?" "At the center, you asked me why I do what I do. Now I'm asking you, why do you do what you do?" He could have lied, should have lied. Given her some sanitized version about business and legacy and building something that mattered. But there was something about her, about the way she looked at him, waiting, not judging, that made lying feel like a waste of both their time. "Because I'm good at it," he said, "and because the alternative was worse." What was the alternative? Being the person things happened to instead of the person who made them happen. She absorbed this, took another bite of pie, thought while she chewed. And now I'm the person who makes things happen, for better or worse. Mostly worse? He almost smiled. You'd be surprised. Try me. So he did. Not everything. Not the blood and the bodies and the deals that stained more than hands. But enough. Enough about growing up in a neighborhood not much better than this one, with a father whose debts became his inheritance and a mother who taught him that love was just another word for leverage. Enough about the choices that weren't choices, the violence that was survival, the slow transformation from victim to victor. Enough to show her the shape of the man he'd become, even if he couldn't show her all the scars. She listened without interrupting, without flinching, without the horror or the fascination he usually saw when people glimpsed his reality. She just listened, the way she probably listened to those kids at the center when they finally trusted her enough to tell the truth. "So you built an empire," she said when he finished, "to make sure you'd never be powerless again." "Yes. And now you have everything." "Yes. Except you're sitting in a diner with terrible coffee, talking to a woman who has nothing you need." She tilted her head. Why? It was the same question she'd asked before, in different words, and he still didn't have a good answer. Or maybe he did, and he just wasn't ready to say it aloud. That power was lonely. That control was exhausting. That somewhere along the way, he'd built a kingdom and forgotten to build a life. "Maybe I'm tired of having everything," he said quietly. "Or maybe you finally realize that everything isn't enough." She said it gently, not an accusation, just an observation, and it landed like a punch. They sat in silence for a while. Dolores refilled his coffee. The jukebox played something twangy about heartbreak and highways. Outside, the city moved through its evening rhythms, people heading home, lights coming on, the soft transition from day to night. And inside this small booth in this unremarkable diner, something shifted. Not romance, not yet. But recognition. Two people who'd survived different hells seeing each other clearly for the first time. "I should go," Sophia said eventually. But she didn't move. "You should," Lorenzo agreed, but he didn't want her to. "This is complicated." "Yes." "You're dangerous." "Yes. I've already lost everything once. I'm not interested in going through that again." "I know." She met his eyes. "Then why are you still here?" And this time, he told her the truth. The real truth. The one that scared him more than any enemy ever had. "Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want something instead of need it, to choose instead of conquer." He paused. "Because you make me want to be the person I could have been." Her breath caught. Just for a second. Just enough for him to know she'd heard him, really heard him. "That's a lot of pressure to put on pie in conversation," she said softly. "I know. What if I disappoint you? What if you don't?" And there it was. The question neither of them could answer. The possibility that hung between them like the last moment before lightning strikes, charged and inevitable and terrifying. She stood. He did too. They walked out together, into the purple dusk, into the neighborhood that was hers and not his, into the uncertain space between goodbye and see you soon. "I'm here most Tuesday and Thursday evenings," she said. "At the center." "I know. That's still following me. It's also showing up." She almost smiled. "There's a difference. You tell me." And this time, she did smile. Small and quick, like a secret she wasn't quite ready to share. "I guess we'll see." Then she walked away. And he let her. Stood on that corner in that neighborhood his driver would never choose, watching her go, feeling something bloom in his chest that had nothing to do with power or control or empire. Some wants are simple. They just ask you to be brave enough to admit them. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for everything to change. 3 weeks of Tuesday and Thursday evenings, of paint-stained fingers and terrible coffee, of conversations that started about art and ended somewhere deeper, of silences that felt like their own language, of Lorenzo learning the names of the kids, Maria and Deshawn, and little Carlos, who painted nothing but dinosaurs, of Sophia, slowly, carefully, letting him into the world she'd built from ashes. He brought supplies, new brushes, real canvas instead of poster board, paint that didn't come from the dollar store. She protested at first, "You can't just buy your way into people's lives," but he'd smiled and said, "I'm not buying, I'm investing." And the distinction mattered, to her, to him, to whatever this was becoming. He met her outside her apartment one Thursday, rain threatening, sky gone grey and heavy. She was locking her door, keys jangling, hair pulled into a messy knot that made her look younger, more vulnerable. She saw him and stopped. "You're early," she said. "Traffic was light." A lie. He'd been there for 20 minutes, parked across the street, working up the courage to approach. Because something had shifted, in him, in this. And he knew, the way you know when a deal is about to close or fall apart, that tonight mattered. "Want to walk?" he asked. "We have time before the center opens." She considered, glanced at the sky, shrugged. "If we get caught in the rain, I'm blaming you." Fair enough. They walked. No destination. Just moving through the neighborhood, past corner stores with security gates, past murals someone had painted to cover graffiti, past the small park where kids were playing basketball despite the weather. And they talked. About nothing. About everything. About the way the city smelled before rain. About whether hot dogs counted as sandwiches. About the last time either of them had done something just because they wanted to, not because they had to. "I don't remember," Lorenzo admitted. "Everything I do is calculated. Even this." "Even this?" "I wanted to see you, but I also wanted to understand you, to figure out what makes you different. And have you? Figured it out?" "No." He stopped walking. They were on a bridge, one of those small pedestrian things that crossed a stream that was more concrete than water. Graffiti on the railings, trash caught in the reeds below, beautiful in the way forgotten things sometimes are. "I just know that I don't want to stop trying." She turned to face him. The wind picked up, pulling strands of hair loose from her knot. The first drops of rain began to fall, light and hesitant, and she looked at him with those clear, careful eyes that had haunted him for weeks. "Lorenzo, I know this is complicated, I'm dangerous. You've already lost everything." He took a breath. "But I need you to know that you're not a game. You're not a conquest. You're—" He trailed off. Couldn't find words big enough for what she was. "I'm what?" "Real." It came out rough, honest. "Everything in my life is leverage or performance or strategy. But when I'm with you, I don't have to be the mafia boss. I can just be me, whoever that is." The rain came harder now, cold drops that soaked through clothes and plastered hair to foreheads. They should have run, should have found shelter. But neither of them moved. "You're asking me to trust you," she said quietly. "To believe that you, with your power and your empire and your—" She gestured vaguely at him, at all of him. "That you want simple, that you want real. I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm just asking you to let me try. And if you fail, if this ends badly, if—" He stepped closer. Close enough that the rain fell on both of them like a baptism. Close enough to see the flecks of gold in her eyes. Close enough to count her breaths. "Then we'll survive it," he said. "The way we've survived everything else." And she broke. Whatever wall she'd been building, whatever defense she'd been maintaining, it cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, just cracked. Like the first split in ice before spring. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "Probably. You're going to break my heart. Maybe. Or maybe you'll break mine first. Lorenzo, kiss me." Not a demand. A request. Vulnerable and raw. "Please. Because I've been thinking about it for 3 weeks, and I need to know if this is real or if I've lost my mind." She should have said no. Should have walked away. Should have protected herself from the inevitable pain that came from loving dangerous men. But she didn't. Instead, she reached up, put her hand on his chest right over his heart, which was racing like it hadn't since he was young enough to feel fear, and said, "If this goes wrong, it won't. You don't know that. No, But I know this. And he kissed her, soft at first, gentle, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he pushed too hard. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone, her hand fisted in his shirt. The rain soaked them both, cold and relentless, but neither of them noticed. There was only the warmth of her mouth against his, the way she made a small sound, surprise or surrender, or both. The way the world narrowed to this moment, this bridge, this kiss that felt like coming home to a place he'd never been. She pulled back first, breathing hard, eyes wide, rain dripping from her lashes. "Oh no," she said. "What?" "That was real." "Yes, that was—" She touched her lips, like she was trying to hold on to the feeling. "We're in trouble." He smiled, couldn't help it. "Yes. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone like you." "Then we'll figure it out together. It's not that simple." "It is, we just decide it is." She laughed, wet and breathless, and a little bit broken. "You make it sound easy." "It's not easy. It's terrifying." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." And that was it. The moment everything changed. When the forbidden love they'd been circling stopped being forbidden and just became love. Messy and complicated and probably doomed, but real. So real it hurt. They kissed again. Longer this time. Deeper. Like they were trying to memorize each other through touch. And when they finally pulled apart, both soaked and shivering and smiling like idiots, Lorenzo said, "We're going to be late to the center." "I don't care," Sophia said. "Me neither." And they stood on that bridge in that rain in that forgotten corner of the city, holding each other like the world might end, but at least they'd face it together. Some kisses don't start stories, they just make inevitable what was always going to happen. They became a secret. Not because he asked her to, though his world was dangerous enough to make secrecy necessary, but because she needed it. Needed this thing between them to be just theirs, away from his empire, away from her past. Just two people learning each other in the margins of their lives. He came to the center, to her apartment, small and neat and full of books she'd read more than once, to the diner where Dolores started bringing him pie without asking, to the late-night walks where they talked about everything except what they were becoming. And she came to him, sometimes, to the penthouse he owned but didn't live in, all glass and steel and views that cost more than she made in a year, to the car where his driver pretended not to notice her hand in his, to the quiet moments between danger and duty where he could just be Lorenzo, not the boss, not the lion, just a man who'd found something worth protecting. They made rules without saying them aloud. No phones during their time together, no business, no questions about what he did when he left or who she was before they met. Just presence. Just now. One evening, maybe 5 weeks after that kiss in the rain, she was curled on his couch, leather expensive, uncomfortable, sketching while he worked through paperwork, numbers, accounts, things that would bore her or terrify her or both. And she looked up and said, "Tell me something true." He glanced at her. "What?" "Something true. Something you've never told anyone else." "Why?" "Because I want to know you, not the mafia boss. You." He set down his pen, considered. "I'm afraid of birds." She blinked, then laughed, bright and surprised. "Birds?" "Pigeons specifically. They have dead eyes and weird feet and they move unpredictably." "Oh my God." "It's a completely rational fear. It's adorable. It's embarrassing. It's human." She set down her sketchbook. "See, that's what I want. The human parts. The parts that make you more than the myth." So he told her. About the nightmares he still had sometimes. About his mother, who'd loved him in the only way she knew how, fiercely and fearfully. About the first time he'd killed someone, and how it hadn't felt like the movies, hadn't felt like anything except necessary and nauseating. About the loneliness of power. About the way he sometimes stood in his empty penthouse and wondered if this was really winning, or just a very elaborate way of losing. And she told him. About the year after her husband died, when she forgot how to sleep, how to eat, how to be anything except empty, about the guilt of surviving, about building the center as penance or purpose. She still wasn't sure which. About the fear that she'd never love anyone again, never let anyone in, never risk the kind of loss that had nearly destroyed her. "And now?" he asked. "Now I'm terrified," she admitted. "Because you're the first thing I've wanted since I learned what loss tastes like. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll try." It wasn't enough. It was everything. They fell into a rhythm. Tuesday and Thursday at the center, where he was surprisingly good with the kids. Patient in a way that shocked her, protective in a way that didn't. Weekends when he could steal away from obligations, showing up at her door with takeout, and that small smile that meant he'd been thinking about her. Late nights when she couldn't sleep and he couldn't either, both of them shaped by loss in different ways, finding comfort in shared wakefulness. He learned her. The way she drank coffee, too much cream, just enough sugar. The way she fell asleep reading, book open on her chest, reading glasses sliding down her nose. The way she hummed when she painted, unconscious melodies that had no tune. The way she touched him, carefully at first, then with growing confidence like she was memorizing him through her fingertips. The way she laughed, rare and real and worth whatever it took to earn it. She learned him, the tension he carried in his shoulders. The way his accent got stronger when he was tired or angry. The scar on his ribs from a knife that had come too close. The other scars, the invisible ones, that shaped every choice he made. The way he watched her like she might vanish if he looked away. The way he touched her, reverently, carefully, like she was something precious and breakable. The way he said her name, Sophia, like it was a prayer, or a promise, or both. "What are we doing?" she asked one night. They were in his kitchen, marble and chrome and underused, making pasta because she'd insisted that no one should live on takeout alone. "Making carbonara," he said. "Unhelpful. You know what I mean." He did. They'd been carefully not having this conversation for weeks, not defining it, not examining it too closely, because naming things gave them power, and power made them real, and real meant they could be lost. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I've never done this before." "Done what? Dated? Cared?" He turned to face her. "Everyone I've been with wanted something, status, money, the thrill of danger. But you—" He shook his head. "You want me to be boring, to cook pasta and watch movies and talk about birds." "You like birds?" "I told you I'm afraid of—" He stopped, caught her smile. "You're messing with me." "A little." He stepped closer, took the spoon from her hand, set it down carefully. "I don't know what we're doing, but I know I don't want to stop. Even though it's complicated? Especially because it's complicated, simple is overrated." She looked up at him. This man who'd built empires and destroyed enemies and controlled more than she could imagine. Who stood in her kitchen learning to make carbonara and admitted he was afraid of pigeons. Who kissed her like she was oxygen and looked at her like she was home. "I'm falling in love with you," she said. "Not a confession, just a fact. And it terrifies me." "Good." "Good? If you weren't scared, I'd know you weren't paying attention." He cupped her face. "I'm terrified too, because you have the power to destroy me in ways no enemy ever could." "I would never—" "I know. That's what makes it so dangerous." And he kissed her, soft and slow and thorough, like they had all the time in the world, like there wasn't an empire waiting for him or a past haunting her. Like they were just two people making pasta and falling in love and building something beautiful in the margins of their lives. Some loves don't announce themselves. They just grow quiet and sure until one day you realize you can't breathe without them. It was raining again when everything shifted. Funny how rain kept marking their moments, like the universe was washing away what came before so something new could grow. She'd had a bad day. One of her kids, Deshawn, 17 and too smart for his circumstances, had been arrested. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong skin color. Charges would probably be dropped, but the damage was done. Another statistic, another story that ended before it should. She'd spent hours making phone calls, pulling strings she didn't have, feeling the helplessness that came from caring deeply and affecting little. Lorenzo found her on her apartment steps, rain-soaked again, not crying, but close. Just sitting, staring at nothing. That same stillness he'd noticed the very first time. He didn't ask, just sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched, close enough to be present without crowding. "I can fix it," he said finally. Quiet, offering. "No. I have lawyers, connections, I know you can." She turned to look at him. "But you won't, because that's not the solution. That's just moving pieces around a broken board. It would help Deshawn. This time. What about next time? What about all the other kids? You can't save everyone, Lorenzo." "I could try." "And then what? Then they owe you. Then it's not help, it's leverage." She shook her head. "I know how your world works. There's no such thing as a free favor." He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, but she wasn't. Every kindness in his world came with strings, invisible, unspoken, but always there. That was just how things worked, how he'd survived, how he'd built everything. "So what do we do?" he asked. "We sit here, we feel it. We remember that caring hurts sometimes, and we do it anyway." So they did. Sat on her steps in the rain, two people who'd learned different languages of survival, finding a common vocabulary in silence. Later, after the rain stopped, after she'd showered and changed, after he'd ordered food they barely touched, she came to him, not the way she usually did, careful and testing, but with purpose, with decision. "Stay," she said. One word, infinite weight. "I am staying." "No, I mean stay, here, tonight, with me." And he understood. This wasn't about sex, though he wanted her with an intensity that sometimes shocked him. This was about trust, about letting him into the last space she'd kept sacred, about choosing connection over safety. "Are you sure?" he asked. "No, but I'm tired of being sure. I'm tired of protecting myself from something that might not even hurt me. I'm tired of—" Her voice cracked. "I'm tired of being alone, Lorenzo." "You're not alone." "Then prove it. Stay. Not on the couch, not with one foot out the door. Just stay." So he did. They lay in her bed, small, comfortable, nothing like his, and held each other, his arms around her, her head on his chest, her hand over his heart, feeling it beat steady and sure. And they talked. About everything and nothing. About the rain and the kid and the feeling of helplessness that came from loving in a broken world. About fear and faith, and what it meant to let someone see all of you, scars and stains and all. "I haven't done this since—" She stopped. "I know. It feels like a betrayal, like I'm replacing him." "You're not replacing anyone. You're just continuing, living." "Isn't that what he'd want?" "I don't know, maybe, probably." She was quiet for a moment. "I loved him. I need you to know that. He was good and kind and he's gone. And you survived. And survival means eventually learning to live, not just exist." Lorenzo tightened his arms around her. "I'm not him. I don't want to be him, but I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise." "I know. But I can promise I'll try. Every day. In whatever way I can." She lifted her head, looked at him in the dim light filtering through her curtains. "I love you," she said, clear, certain, terrifying. "I didn't want to, but I do. I love you too." The words felt strange in his mouth, foreign and familiar at once. "I didn't know I could, but I do." And they kissed, slow and deep and desperate, like they were trying to prove something to themselves, that this was real, that they were real. That love in the darkest places wasn't just possible, it was blooming right here between them. They made love for the first time that night, not frantically, not performatively, but carefully, like they were learning a new language together, every touch a question, every response an answer, every breath a conversation. He memorized her, the way she sighed when he kissed her neck, the way her fingers dug into his shoulders, the way she whispered his name like it meant something. Like he meant something. Not the empire or the power or the fear. Just him. just the man beneath it all. She discovered him, the vulnerability hidden under control, the gentleness masked by violence, the way he trembled when she touched him, like he'd forgotten what it felt like to be wanted for something other than utility, the way he held her after, protective and possessive and tender all at once. And when they finally fell asleep, tangled together in her small bed in her modest apartment in a neighborhood he'd never have chosen, Lorenzo Vitale, the mafia boss who controlled half the city, felt something he hadn't felt since childhood. Safe. Some intimacy is physical and some is spiritual, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find both in the same person. It couldn't last. Beautiful things rarely did in his experience. The call came at 3 a.m., Lorenzo's phone vibrating on her nightstand, silent, insistent. He woke instantly, the way people trained for danger always did. Reached for it, saw the name, felt her stir beside him. "Don't answer it," she mumbled, half asleep. "I have to. Just this once, don't." But he already had. What? Not a question. A command for information. The voice on the other end was rushed, panicked. Someone had made a move. A rival family, an ambitious lieutenant. The details didn't matter. What mattered was that Lorenzo's absence had been noted. His vulnerability had been spotted. And now there was a situation that required the mafia boss, not the man. "I'll be there in 20, he said. Ended the call. Sophia was awake now, sitting up, watching him dress in the dark. "You're leaving." "I have to. It's 3 a.m. "I know." "Lorenzo, I'll be back, I promise." "You can't promise that." Her voice was small, scared. "This is what I was afraid of, that one day you'd leave and just not come back." He stopped, turned, crossed back to the bed and cupped her face. "I will always come back to you. Do you understand? Always. Until you can't. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But not today. Today I go, I handle this, and I come back. Okay?" She wanted to argue. He could see it. But she also knew his world. Knew that some things couldn't be delayed or delegated or ignored, so she just nodded. Kissed him once, quick and fierce. "Be careful." "Always am." A lie, but a kind one. He handled the situation, violently, efficiently, with the cold precision that had made him legend. By dawn it was over. The threat was neutralized. The message was sent. Il Leone was still Il Leone, but he was exhausted, the kind of tired that went deeper than muscles. Soul tired. And all he wanted was to go back to that small apartment, that small bed, that woman who looked at him like he was more than the sum of his violence. Instead, he had meetings, obligations, the empire that never slept. So he showered in his penthouse, washing blood from his knuckles, stains from his soul, and went back to work. He didn't see her for 3 days, not because he didn't want to, but because 3 days turned into 3 nights, turned into emergencies and opportunities, and all the things that made his world turn. He called when he could, texted when he couldn't. But it wasn't the same, wasn't enough. When he finally made it back to her apartment, she opened the door and just looked at him. Tired, wary, a little angry. "Hi," he said. "Inadequate." "Hi." She stepped back. Let him in. "You look terrible." "I feel terrible." "Good." They stood in her small living room, the space that had become sacred, become theirs, and the distance between them felt like miles. "I'm sorry," he said. "I tried to—" I know you tried." She crossed her arms. Protective. "But this is what it's going to be, isn't it? You disappearing for days. Me not knowing if you're hurt or dead or just busy. Me waiting, worrying, building my life around your absence. It's not always like this, isn't it?" She wasn't angry. That would have been easier. She was resigned. "Because this is your world, Lorenzo. This is what you do, and I knew that. I did. I just didn't know what it would feel like to love someone whose life is always on the edge. I'll do better. I'll make time." "That's not the point." It burst out of her, sharp and pained. "The point is that your world and my world, they don't fit. They can't. Because when you're with me, you're not being the boss. You're being Lorenzo. And that's beautiful. But it's also not sustainable, because eventually your world is going to demand all of you, and I'm going to be left with nothing but the memory of the man you were when we were alone. The truth of it hit him like a bullet, clean, devastating. So, what are you saying? He asked, afraid of the answer. I'm saying I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to love you and keep myself intact. I don't know how to build a life in the margins when the margins keep getting smaller. Then we make them bigger. I'll step back from some things, delegate more, find a way to... And then what? You're not fully in your world or fully in mine. You're just split. That's not fair to you. Or to me. Silence, heavy and horrible. I love you, he said. It felt like surrender. I love you too. She was crying now. Quiet tears that broke him more than screaming would have. That's the problem. I love you enough to know that this us, it's hurting you. Making you choose between who you are and who you want to be. I choose you. For how long? A month, a year? Until something happens that forces you to choose your empire over me? She shook her head. I can't do it, Lorenzo. I can't sit around waiting for the call that tells me you're dead. I already buried one love, I won't bury another. So you're ending this. I'm asking us to be realistic about what this is, about what it can be. And what can it be? She looked at him with those clear, devastated eyes. I don't know, maybe nothing, maybe everything. But not this. Not me waiting in the margins while you live in the fire. He wanted to argue, wanted to promise her things he couldn't guarantee, wanted to be angry at her for being right, but he was too tired, too broken, too in love with a woman who saw him clearly enough to know that loving him came with a cost neither of them had fully counted. I should go, he said. Lorenzo, no, you're right. This was never going to work. I was just too stubborn to see it. That's not what I'm saying, isn't it? He moved to the door, stopped, looked back. I meant what I said, about coming back, about always coming back. But you need to decide if you'll be here when I do. Then he left, walked out into the morning that felt like ending, got in his car, drove back to his empire. And for the first time in years, Lorenzo Vitale, who'd conquered every enemy, who'd built something from nothing, who'd survived everything life threw at him, felt like he'd finally lost a fight that mattered. Some battles aren't won or lost. They're just fought until everyone's too tired to keep swinging. A week passed, then 2, then 3. Lorenzo threw himself into work, into expansion and consolidation and all the things that had mattered before her. He was ruthless, efficient, more effective than he'd been in months, because when you had nothing to lose, you stopped pulling punches, stopped compromising. Just became the thing everyone already feared. His men noticed, gave him space, knew better than to ask about the woman who'd briefly made the boss almost human. But at night, in his penthouse full of expensive nothing, he thought about her, about the way she'd looked at him when she loved him, about the sound of her laugh, the taste of her coffee, the feeling of her hand in his, about the life they'd built in margins that should have been big enough, about the choice he'd never really made. Sophia did the opposite. She contracted, made herself small and safe and numb, went to the center, taught the kids, came home, repeated. Built a routine that had no room for feeling, because feeling meant remembering and remembering meant breaking. The kids knew something was wrong. Miss Sophia, you okay? Maria asked one evening. I'm fine, sweetie. You look sad. Just tired. But Maria wasn't fooled. The man who came here? The one who looked at you like you were the sun? He's gone, huh? Sophia's hands stilled on the paintbrush. Yes. Did he hurt you? No, never. Then why? Good question. Why did love have to be a choice between safety and surrender? Why couldn't you have both? Why did caring always cost more than you budgeted for? Sometimes people don't fit, Sophia said carefully, even when they love each other. That's stupid, Maria said with teenage certainty. And maybe it was. On a Tuesday, 5 weeks after Lorenzo left, Sophia was closing up the center when she found the envelope. Plain white. Her name in handwriting she recognized. Inside, a key and a note. I bought the building. The center is yours, no strings, no leverage, just because you need space to do what you do and I need to know you're safe doing it. The deed is in your name. The utilities are paid for a year. After that, there's a fund. You don't have to take it, you don't have to keep it. But if you do, know that it comes with no expectations. Just hope that you'll let kids keep painting dinosaurs. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't be both things. She read it 3 times. Then sat on the floor and cried. Not sad tears, not happy tears, just release. The kind of crying that happened when someone saw you so clearly they gave you what you needed instead of what you asked for. He'd listened to every word she'd said about the center, about safety, about building something that mattered. And he'd done this, not to buy her back, not to prove anything, just to support the thing she loved, even if he couldn't be part of it. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for her. It was also the most heartbreaking, because it proved he loved her enough to let her go, to give her the space she'd asked for, to be the bigger person even when it destroyed him. And she realized, sitting there on the floor of the center that was now hers, that she'd made a mistake. Not in asking for space, but in thinking space was the solution. In believing that love was about fitting perfectly instead of choosing to fit. In letting fear make decisions that should have been made by faith. She found him at his penthouse. It took 3 tries to get past security, 3 explanations that she wasn't a threat, wasn't dangerous, just needed to see him. Eventually, someone recognized her, made a call, got clearance. The elevator ride up felt like miles. He opened the door himself, looked shocked, then guarded, then carefully blank. Sophia, can I come in? He stepped back, let her enter. The penthouse looked the same, expensive, cold, unlived in. He looked different, tired, older, like the weeks had aged him years. I got your gift, she said. It's not a gift, it's a necessity. The building was going to be sold, turned into condos. I couldn't. He stopped, shook his head. You don't have to thank me. I wasn't going to thank you. I was going to tell you you're an idiot. He blinked. What? You're an idiot. For thinking the solution was space. For thinking I wanted you to step back. For thinking, her voice cracked, for thinking I wanted to do this without you. You said, I know what I said. I was scared and tired, and I just spent 3 days terrified you were dead, so I panicked. I pushed you away before you could leave me, which is what people do when they've lost everything once and can't stand to lose it again. He didn't move, didn't react, just watched her like he was afraid she was a mirage. But I was wrong, she continued. Not about your world being dangerous, not about this being complicated, but about thinking we had to choose, about thinking love was about margins and fitting perfectly. She stepped closer. We don't fit, Lorenzo. We never will. Your world and mine, they're too different. But maybe that's okay. Maybe love isn't about fitting. Maybe it's about choosing every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Sophia, I don't want you to quit your world. I don't want you to be someone you're not. I just want, she was crying now. I just want you, however that works, whatever that looks like. I want to build something with you that isn't perfect or safe or simple. I want the messy, complicated, terrifying version where we figure it out as we go. You said you couldn't bury another love. I still can't, but I also can't bury this one while it's still alive. She took his hands. I love you, fully, messily, completely. And I'm tired of pretending that's a problem instead of the point. He pulled her to him, held her like she was the answer to every question he'd been afraid to ask. I love you too. God, I love you. And I'll do better. I'll make time. I'll find ways to... Stop. She pulled back enough to look at him. No promises you can't keep. No guarantees about the future. Just try. Every day, just try. And I'll try too. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it is. And he kissed her. Deep and desperate and full of everything they'd said and hadn't said, full of apology and acceptance, and that bone-deep relief that came from realizing you'd almost lost something and gotten it back. Move in with me, he said against her lips. What? Move in. Here, bring your books and your terrible coffee and your paintings. Make this place feel like home, because it's never been that until you were in it. Lorenzo, that's crazy? Probably. But I'm tired of margins. I want you in the center of my life. I want to wake up with you every morning and know you're safe. I want... He cupped her face. I want everything, Sophia. With you, whatever that looks like. She should have said it was too fast, too much, too everything. But she didn't, because some risks were worth taking, some loves were worth the fear, and this man, this dangerous, complicated, beautiful man, was worth choosing. Every single day. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay. But I'm not giving up the center. I wouldn't ask you to. And we need rules about safety, about communication, about whatever you need. And you have to promise to tell me when you're in danger, not after, during. Sophia, promise me, because I can handle danger. What I can't handle is not knowing. He hesitated, then nodded. I promise. Okay then. She smiled, first real smile in weeks. Let's build something messy. The messiest, he agreed. And they did. Some loves are easy and some are hard, and the best ones are both, worth every moment of difficulty and every second of grace. Moving in together was a comedy of incompatibilities. She brought boxes of books, old paperbacks with cracked spines, art theory tomes, novels she'd read so many times the pages fell out. He had shelves of expensive first editions he'd never opened. She stacked hers on the floor, alphabetized by author. He stared at them like they were invading. We have shelves, he said. Those are for pretty books. These are for reading books. What's the difference? About 300 pages and a sense of purpose. He learned to step over stacks. She learned not to judge him for books as decoration. Her coffee maker, a battered drip thing that wheezed and sputtered, took up space in his kitchen of professional-grade appliances. That doesn't even make espresso, he said. It makes coffee. That's its job. I have a machine that makes espresso, I know, but this makes coffee that tastes like home. So the machine stayed. And every morning, his kitchen smelled like her version of morning. And eventually he stopped suggesting the espresso maker. She painted. In his pristine living room with floor-to-ceiling windows and cream carpets, set up an easel and tarps, and made the whole space smell like turpentine and creativity. He came home one day to find blue paint on the couch. Sophia. I know. I'm sorry. I'll clean it. That couch cost more than my car, I know. I'm really sorry. But he just looked at the blue smudge, then at her covered in paint, looking guilty and beautiful and exactly like the kind of mess he'd never known he needed. It's fine. Really. It's just a couch. You love that couch. I love you more. The blue stain stayed, a reminder that some things were more important than pristine. His meetings happened at all hours. Men in expensive suits showing up at midnight, hushed conversations in his office. Her in the bedroom, headphones on, pretending not to know what was being discussed, maintaining the fiction that his world didn't touch hers. One night, a meeting ran long. She came out for water, walked past the office, heard her name. With the teacher. Boss, she's a liability. She knows too much, sees too much. She stopped, listened. She knows nothing. Lorenzo's voice, cold, final. And if I hear her name in this context again, we'll have a problem. Clear? Silence. Then agreement. She went back to the bedroom, didn't mention it. But she understood something fundamental. In his world, she was a weakness, a target, something to be protected or exploited, depending on which side you were on. That night, lying in bed, she asked, "Am I making your life harder?" "What?" "Your men. They think I'm a liability. They think everything is a liability. It's their job. But am I?" He rolled to face her. "You are the only thing in my life that makes me feel human. If that's a liability, then I'll take it. Lorenzo, I know the risks. I know what having you here means. And I'm choosing it anyway. We both are, right?" She thought about it. About the blue paint and the coffee maker and the books on the floor. about building a life in this sterile penthouse that was slowly becoming home, about loving someone whose world included danger as a default setting. Right, she agreed. Some compromises aren't about giving up. They're about deciding what's worth protecting. It happened on a Thursday. She was at the center, late, cleaning up after a workshop when they came. 3 men, not his, someone else's. Someone who'd decided that the way to hurt Lorenzo Vitale was through her. They were efficient. One grabbed her arm, another covered her mouth. The third checked for witnesses. And just like that, she was being dragged toward a van, toward whatever nightmare they'd planned. Except Maria was there. 17, street smart, not about to let Miss Sophia disappear. She ran, out the door, down the street, to the corner where Lorenzo's men always watched, the ones Sophia pretended not to notice, the ones Lorenzo had assigned without asking. They took her. 3 guys, black van. They took Miss Sophia. And the machine activated. Lorenzo got the call while in a meeting, heard 4 words, "They have Sophia." And the mafia boss that he'd tried to soften for her came roaring back, cold, focused, lethal. Who? Don't know yet. Van headed east. We're tracking. Find her, now. He stood. Every man in the room read his face and wisely said nothing. This wasn't Il Leone, the careful strategist. This was something older, something brutal, something that happened when you touched what was his. "Everyone out," he said quietly, "and someone tell me who did this in the next 10 minutes or I start making examples." They did. Rival family. Ambitious. Stupid. Thinking that taking his woman would give them leverage. Not understanding that taking his woman meant they'd just signed their own death warrants. Sophia was in a warehouse. Predictable, cliché, but no less terrifying. They'd zip-tied her hands, put her in a chair. One of them, the leader, she guessed, stood in front of her playing with a knife, letting her see it, letting her imagine. "Nothing personal," he said, "just business. Your boyfriend took something from my boss. Now we're taking something from him. He'll kill you," she said. Calm. Because panic wouldn't help and these men fed on fear. "Maybe, but first he'll negotiate and that's all we need. You don't know him. I know he's in love. Makes him weak. It makes him terrifying." The man laughed. "We'll see." But Sophia knew. Lorenzo wouldn't negotiate. He'd obliterate. Would burn down everything connected to these men. Would make an example so brutal that no one would ever think about touching her again. And she should have been horrified by that. Should have hated the violence that was coming. But she didn't. Because these men had made a choice. And choices had consequences. It took Lorenzo 45 minutes to find her. 45 minutes of coordinated chaos, tracking the van, identifying the location, assembling his people, planning the assault. 45 minutes that felt like 45 years. They hit the warehouse like a storm, his men, trained and loyal and absolutely clear on what happened to people who touched the boss's woman. It was surgical, brutal, over in minutes. Lorenzo found her in the back room, still in the chair, bruised but not broken, watching him with those clear eyes that had first caught his attention. "Hi," she said, like this was a normal Tuesday. "Hi." He cut the zip ties gently, his hands shaking just a little. "Are you hurt?" "No." Scared, but not hurt. "Good." He cupped her face, checked for injuries, for damage, for anything that would give him excuse to do worse to the men who'd taken her. "I'm sorry, this should never have—" "Lorenzo," she put her hands over his, "I knew the risks. Knowing and experiencing are different. I know, but I'm okay. We're okay." Around them his men were finishing up, binding the kidnappers, making calls, cleaning up the mess that would need to be disappeared. It was efficient, practiced, a well-oiled machine doing what it did best. And Sophia saw it all, saw the truth of his world, not filtered through distance or denial, saw the violence, the blood, the cold efficiency of power protecting what it loved. "Does this change things?" he asked quietly. Afraid of the answer, she looked at the warehouse, at the men who'd taken her, at Lorenzo who'd come for her without hesitation, looked at the reality of loving a man like him, and made a choice. No, she said, but we need to talk about protection, real protection, because I won't be weak, Lorenzo. If I'm in your world, I need to be able to defend myself in it. He blinked. Surprised. You want training? I want to not feel helpless. There's a difference. Sophia, I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what I need. You said you'd try. This is me trying too. And he saw it. The strength he'd always known was there. The steel wrapped in softness. The woman who'd survived loss and built beauty from ashes, deciding that she'd survive this too. On her terms. Okay, he said. I'll arrange it. Thank you. But first, he pulled her close. Held her like she might disappear if he let go. First, you let me hold you, because I was terrified, and I need to know you're real. So she did. Let him hold her in that warehouse with his world happening around them. Let herself be vulnerable and strong at once. Let him know that she'd chosen this, him, them, the messy, complicated, dangerous, beautiful thing they were building, and she wasn't backing away. Some strength isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and staying anyway. The training started the next week. Lorenzo hired the best. Not just fighters, but strategists. People who understood that protection wasn't about brute force, but awareness. Reading situations, knowing exits, understanding how violence worked so you could avoid it. Sophia was a terrible student at first, too empathetic, too hesitant. I can't just hit someone, she protested after a self-defense drill. If they're trying to hurt you, yes you can, her instructor said. A woman, ex-military, who'd seen enough to know that morality was a luxury in survival situations. But, no buts, you hesitate, you die, simple math. So Sophia learned, not to be violent, but to not be a victim, to carry herself differently, to see threats before they materialized, to understand that power wasn't always about control. Sometimes it was about choosing not to use force because you could if needed. Lorenzo watched sometimes. From the doorway of the gym he'd built in the penthouse. Watched her become something harder without losing her softness. Watched her choose strength without sacrificing compassion. She's good, the instructor said one day. Natural awareness. Just needed confidence. Thank you. You love her. Not a question. Yes. Then teach her your world. Really teach her. Because half knowledge is worse than none. So he did. They had conversations they'd avoided before. About his business. Not the sanitized version, but the real one. About territories and loyalty and what happened to people who broke the rules. About the cost of power, the sleep lost, the choices made, the weight carried. About the fact that every luxury in his penthouse was built on decisions she'd probably hate if she knew the details. I'm not a good man, he said one night. They were on the balcony, the city spread below them like a carpet of lights. I've done things, terrible things. And I'd do them again if necessary. I know. Do you? Really? She was quiet for a moment. I know you've hurt people, probably killed people. I know your money isn't clean, and your power isn't earned through kindness. She turned to face him. But I also know you're trying to be better. Not good, better. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Good is abstract. Better is intentional. You wake up every day and choose to be a version of yourself that can exist with me. That's not redemption. But it's movement, and that's enough. What if it's not enough for you eventually? Then we'll deal with it, but don't make decisions based on hypotheticals. We're here, now, together. That's what matters. And he believed her, because she'd seen the worst and stayed, because she'd been taken and hadn't blamed him, because she loved him with eyes open, not despite his darkness, but with full awareness of it. She introduced him to her world too, not just the center, but the why of it. Took him to meet the families of her kids, showed him the neighborhood that most people wrote off. Let him see the beauty in resilience, the power in community, the way people survived when systems failed them. One evening, they visited Deshawn, the kid who'd been arrested, who'd gotten his charges dropped thanks to lawyers Lorenzo had quietly provided. His grandmother made dinner, fried chicken and collard greens and cornbread that tasted like love. "Thank you," the grandmother said to Lorenzo, "for helping my boy. It was nothing. It was everything." She squeezed his hand, hard. "You're a good man." Lorenzo glanced at Sophia. She smiled, knew what he was thinking. Not good, just trying. But the grandmother saw something else, saw a man using power to build instead of destroy, saw someone who'd helped without asking for worship, saw maybe the possibility of redemption hidden under all that controlled violence. That night, lying in bed, Lorenzo said, "Your world is exhausting." Exhausting. All that hope, all that faith that things will get better, he struggled for words. "It's brave. Braver than anything I do. You face down armed enemies. That's easy. You face down systemic failure every day and still believe you can make a difference. That's terrifying." She rolled to face him. "You help too. The building, the lawyers for Deshawn, the supplies you keep bringing. That's just money. Money is power. You're choosing to use yours to build. That matters. Does it? Really? Or am I just trying to buy indulgences for my sins? Maybe both. Maybe that's okay." She kissed him, soft. "You don't have to be perfect, Lorenzo. You just have to try. What if I fail? Then you'll fail, and we'll figure it out. Together." "Together," he repeated, testing the word, finding comfort in it. "Together," she confirmed. And they fell asleep like that. Two people from different worlds building something new in the space between. Not perfect. Not simple, but real and trying, always trying. Some growth isn't about becoming someone new. It's about letting someone see all of who you are and choosing to be better anyway. 6 months after Sophia moved in, Lorenzo got an offer. Retirement, essentially. A buyout from a coalition of families who wanted his territory without the fight. More money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. Safety. A clean exit from a life that usually ended in blood or prison. "Take it," his oldest associate said. "You've earned it. Get out while you still can." But Lorenzo hesitated, because Empire wasn't just about money. It was about power, purpose, identity. He'd spent 20 years becoming Il Leone. Without it, who was he? Just another man with too much money and not enough meaning. He didn't tell Sophia right away, needed to think it through. But she noticed. "Something's wrong," she said one morning. They were having coffee, her terrible drip stuff that he'd learned to love. "You're distracted. Just thinking." About? He could have lied. Deflected. But they'd built this on honesty, and he wasn't about to break it now. "I got an offer. To sell. To walk away from all of it." She set down her cup. And I don't know what to do." "What do you want to do?" "I want—" He stopped, started again. "Part of me wants to take it, to walk away, to build a life that's just normal, safe, with you." He met her eyes. "But the other part knows that I'm not built for normal, that this, the empire, the power, it's who I am. Is it? Or is it who you've been? What's the difference?" "Everything." She came around the counter, took his hands. "Who you've been is the man who survived by becoming untouchable. Who you are is the man who sits with me every morning drinking terrible coffee and pretending to like it. Who you could be is up to you. And what if I choose wrong? Then we'll deal with it. But Lorenzo—" She squeezed his hands. "You need to choose. Not for me. Not for the empire. For you. What do you want your life to look like? Not in theory, in practice. Every day. What do you want?" And that was the question, wasn't it? What did he want? He took 3 days to decide. 3 days of walking through his empire like he was saying goodbye, visiting territories, meeting with associates, seeing, really seeing, what he'd built. It was impressive, powerful, but it was also lonely. Every handshake was calculated. Every loyalty was purchased. Every relationship was transactional. He'd built a kingdom, but he'd never built a home. Except with her. On the 3rd night, he came back to the penthouse. Sophia was painting, her easel by the windows, the city glowing behind her. She looked up when he entered, waited. I'm taking the deal, he said. She set down her brush. Are you sure? No, but I'm choosing it anyway. He crossed to her. 20 years. I built something because I needed to prove I couldn't be broken, that I was strong enough to never be powerless again. And I did it. I proved it. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what I was trying to protect, what the point of power was if I had no one to share it with. Lorenzo, you make me want normal, Sophia. You make me want mornings with coffee and evenings at the center and nights where the biggest danger is your paint on my couch. And maybe that makes me weak. Maybe that means I'm losing who I was, but I don't care, because who I was, that man, he was surviving, and I'm tired of surviving. I want to live. She was crying. Silent tears that tracked down her cheeks. You're not weak. You're brave. Braver than I've ever been. I'm terrified. Good. Me too. But we'll be terrified together. Together, he agreed, and kissed her. Deep and sure and full of every choice they'd made and would make, full of the promise that some endings were really beginnings. The transition took months, selling territory, transferring power, making sure the people who'd been loyal had soft landings. It was complicated and messy and sometimes dangerous. There were always people unhappy with change, but Lorenzo navigated it the way he'd navigated everything, with precision and strategy and the absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Sophia was there through all of it, not involved in the business, that had never been her world, but present, supportive, a reminder of why he was doing this, what he was choosing. One evening, after a particularly difficult negotiation, he came home exhausted, found her at the center. He'd started going with her sometimes, helping with admin work, learning the names of new kids. She was teaching a girl to shade, patient and encouraging, everything he'd never learned to be. He watched from the doorway and felt it settle, the rightness of this choice, the knowledge that he'd traded power for presence, empire for intimacy, the legend of Il Leone for the reality of Lorenzo. Hey, she said when she noticed him, smiled, that smile that had changed everything. How'd it go? It's done. Done? Done. I'm officially retired. She set down her brush, came to him, wrapped her arms around him. How do you feel? Like I can finally breathe. Good, because I've been holding my breath for 6 months. He laughed, pulled her closer. What now? Now? Now we live. We wake up. We have coffee. We come here. We go home. We build something small and beautiful and ours. And we do it every day until it stops feeling strange and starts feeling like life. That sounds good. It sounds boring. I like boring. Liar, she grinned. But I love you anyway. I love you too. And they stayed like that. In the center, that was hers. In the life, that was theirs. Two people who'd found each other in the margins and decided to build something in the center instead. Some choices aren't about right or wrong. They're about who you want to be when the story ends. A year later, they got married. Not a big wedding. Sophia didn't want that, just the center, decorated with string lights and artwork from the kids. Just the people who mattered. Her small circle of friends, his smaller circle of former associates who'd become genuine connections, the teenagers who'd watched them fall in love and build something real. Dolores catered, fried chicken and pie, the best meal money couldn't buy. Lorenzo wore a suit. Sophia wore a simple dress, cream-colored, knee-length, the kind of thing that cost nothing and meant everything. She looked beautiful, not magazine beautiful, real beautiful, the kind that came from joy instead of effort. They said vows they'd written themselves. I promise to keep drinking your terrible coffee, Lorenzo said, to let you paint on my couch, to show up at the center even when I don't understand the project, to tell you when I'm afraid, to let you see me, all of me, even the parts I'm not proud of. I promise to be patient with your retirement adjustment, Sophia said, making everyone laugh, to understand that power doesn't just disappear because you sold it, to love both the man you were and the man you're becoming, to stay, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I promise to choose you, every day, in every way, he said. I promise to let you, she replied. and they kissed, as husband and wife, as partners, as two people who'd built something impossible in the ruins of their separate lives. They moved out of the penthouse eventually. Too much marble, too many memories of who Lorenzo had been instead of who he was becoming. Bought a brownstone in Sophia's neighborhood, the one he'd once avoided, the one that was now home. Fixed it up together, painted walls, hung her artwork, built a life that was comfortable and messy and full of the small beauties that money couldn't buy. Lorenzo found purpose in unexpected places, started a foundation, using the fortune from his buyout to fund community centers, legal aid, youth programs. Not redemption, just investment, putting money into building instead of controlling, learning that power could create instead of destroy. Sophia expanded her work. The center became a network of centers, more kids, more art, more hope planted in neighborhoods that needed it. Lorenzo helped, with funding, with logistics, with showing up and not making it about him, learning to support instead of lead. They fought sometimes. About money, she was still uncomfortable with how much he had. About safety, she still took risks he didn't love. About the past, sometimes his came calling in ways neither wanted. About the future, what it looked like, what it should be, whether they were doing enough. But they always came back to each other, always chose connection over being right. Always remembered that loving someone wasn't about perfection, it was about presence. 3 years after the wedding, on a Tuesday evening at the center, Lorenzo found Sophia in the supply closet. She was holding a pregnancy test, crying. "Hey," he said, concerned. "What's wrong?" She showed him the test. 2 lines, positive. "Is this—" He couldn't finish. Didn't know what she wanted. Didn't know if this was joy or fear or both. "I'm pregnant," she said. Obvious. Necessary. "And you're terrified, excited, overwhelmed, all of it." She looked at him. "Is this okay? I know we never really discussed." "It's more than okay, it's—" He laughed, shocked and happy, and suddenly seeing a future he'd never let himself imagine. "It's perfect." "Really? Really?" He pulled her close. "We're going to be terrible at this." "Probably. And the kid's going to ask questions about my past that I don't know how to answer." "Definitely. And we'll make mistakes. So many mistakes. But we'll try, together, the way we do everything." "Together," she agreed, and they held each other in that supply closet that smelled like paint and possibility, 2 people who'd survived different hells finding heaven in the most unexpected place, in each other. 7 months later, Lorenzo Vitale, former mafia boss, current stay-at-home dad, sat in a hospital room holding his daughter. She was tiny, perfect, completely terrifying. Sophia was asleep, exhausted from labor. Beautiful even now. He couldn't stop looking between them, his wife, his daughter, his life, and feeling something he'd spent 40 years not believing in. Hope, not the abstract kind, the real kind, the kind that came from building something worth protecting, from choosing love over power, from learning that the strongest thing you could do wasn't control the world, it was let the world change you. "Hey, little one," he whispered to his daughter. She yawned. Didn't care about his past or his empire or anything, except that he was warm and present. "Your mom and I, we're going to mess this up sometimes, but we're going to love you so much. And we're going to teach you that being strong isn't about never being afraid. It's about choosing to be brave anyway." The baby made a sound. Might have been agreement, might have been gas. He chose to believe agreement. Sophia stirred, opened her eyes, smiled at the sight of them. "Hey, hey, you look good with the baby. I look terrified with the baby. That too." She reached out. He brought their daughter to her, sat beside them both. "What are you thinking?" "That I spent 20 years building an empire, and it's not even close to as important as this, as you, as her, as the life we made." Sappy, she said, but she was crying. "I learned from the best." And they sat there, new parents, former survivors, always partners, watching their daughter sleep and feeling like maybe, just maybe, they'd figured something out. That love wasn't about perfect conditions or ideal circumstances. It was about choosing every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Some stories don't end. They just evolve into something better. Some loves don't last, but they all transform us. Lorenzo and Sophia's story wasn't about perfect timing or easy choices. It was about two people who met on the margins and decided to build something in the center, about power learning to surrender, about grief learning to hope, about forbidden love becoming the foundation of something unshakable. If this story reminded you of someone you chose, someone you lost, someone you're still trying to reach, share it in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us what love has taught you and subscribe, because every other day there's a new story. Stories about the messy, complicated and beautiful ways people find each other. Stories about obsession and redemption and the space where broken hearts learn to beat again. Because some stories never end. They just take new forms.